Well, now you're at the VOA, and you recently celebrated 75 years. And now, how would you say, do you ever feel any competition, if any at all, between sister corporations, say, for instance, the BBC, the Radio France International, Deutsche Welle, for instance?
So I think journalists are by nature very competitive, so they'll look around and find competitors, even if there aren't any. But I think more recently, all of us, the big national media in places that we consider have very free presses, have started to realize that the media space, the free media space, is closing very much around the world, and so it's important for us to see each other as partners and not competitors.
Is it closing? One would have thought it would be opening.
The media environment around the world.
Around the world.
No, I think the threats to a free press have been increasing, both in terms of the attacks on journalists and the number of countries that are considered to have free presses. If you look at all the, like Freedom House, then there are reports, the number of countries that are considered to have a free press is decreasing.
Why do you think that is? Because one would have thought that with the invention of, with the technological advancements that we're having, the fact that, you can get the news on your phone, the fact that, well, more and more countries are clamping down on social media, that we know.
That may be part of the reason, is that the widespread availability of it makes it frightening to people who fear a free press, who fear their own people, and they want to control it more. So it's creating more impetus to control what's going on and to make sure that people don't hear those things. I can't guess, I'm not in the minds of those people, but we do see it happening around the world.
Yeah, you have talked about how in the United States you believe very much in the separation of government and the press. But do you think that that separation can exist for much longer, especially when you begin to see, for instance, the social media is involved in, helping to distribute what might be considered journalism, for instance, and you see that sometimes, the government might get concerned as to what people are consuming on those platforms, especially when it is fake.
Again, I think that for traditional American values of separation of journalism and government, I think we would not see regulation of what might be considered news to be at all desirable, because once you start regulating something that's fake news, is it incorrect or is it just news you don't like? When you start regulating things, the way you regulate it is very subjective. So we think that a free press that informs people is much more important.
Well, you have won 2 Pulitzer Prizes, for your work in investigative journalism. Some of them you have done with teams. Would you say the journalists are increasingly interested in that area, or would they consider it too dangerous these days to venture into?
Well, investigative journalism doesn't have to be dangerous. In certain cases it can be dangerous, but it doesn't have to be dangerous. Investigative journalism means you go out and find something that's not working right, that's not helping the people, and you go and find the facts and the information, and then you present it. I've seen investigative projects all around the world for things like the quality of the concrete that's being used to build bridges and dams, things about the way senior government officials are spending the taxpayers' money on cars and things like that, and all kinds of other things like that are very important for the people to know, but aren't necessarily dangerous to report. So I think when I talk to people about investigative journalism, I say start with those things. Start with the things that you can do. You don't have to immediately just go and say, I'm going to do the most dangerous thing out there.
Now, Nigeria is going into elections next year. I'm sure that the VOA is definitely interested in the elections, as we, as a media organization, definitely are as well. How would you recommend that, viewers and people who are going to be watching, stay away or, detect fake news a mile away?
Well, I think one of the things is you look and see what the source of it is, because I think when you're looking at the organizations that are trying to teach us how to spot fake news, one of the first things is, does it come from a reputable organization? Does it an organization that has a reputation for being accurate and fair? And if you look at, does it only come with one source? Was the Twitter account just created yesterday? Those are the kinds of things you have to look at and say, how much can I trust this? I think there's lots of things that readers and viewers can do once they start educating themselves. And that's something that, at least in the United States, a lot of organizations are doing, is starting to think about how you educate the consumer, particularly young people, in how to spot things.
Well, it's great to see you at the top. You're a director at the VOA, and I'm just wondering, as a woman, did being a woman have any obstacles? Did it constitute any obstacles? Did you ever feel that at some point there was a glass ceiling that you couldn't get past because you're a woman?
Well, sure, and it wasn't even the glass ceiling, but there were obviously all kinds of preconceptions. Back in the day when I started, there were very, very few women, particularly at the Wall Street Journal, which is financial journalism. And so very often I found myself being the only woman in the room. So there was partly being having to challenge the stereotype that maybe I didn't know as much about as other people did. There was the stereotype that I wasn't going to want to be promoted because I was going to get married and have kids. You know, there was a stereotype that if I had kids, I couldn't go and do, you know, really aggressive journalism. There's all kinds of things you had to push back against, but I think you see all exactly the same issues around you, and very, very strongly. And I think one of the things I can say to you and other women is that I've seen, over the 40 years I've been in journalism, I've seen the culture change. And it's slow, and it takes a lot of fighting, and it takes a lot of work, but it has changed. There's a lot of things still to happen. I'm sure you've heard or read about the Me Too movement, where you can see that there's still a lot of sexual harassment issues there on the table. But on the other hand, now we're talking about it, and those things were happening 40 years ago. Nobody talked about it. Now at least they're talking about it. So you can see that the culture can change if you push it.
Do you feel any pressure to push it because you're now at the top, for instance?
Absolutely. Absolutely, not just pressure, responsibility. I mean, I feel a responsibility to help bring on younger women and to help them see their careers and to help them feel confident in themselves and to have them have opportunities. I'm trying to look for opportunities for people and help them develop their careers.
Amanda Bennett, it's great to speak with you.
It's terrific to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time to hear you speak. Please stay with us.